Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Metal Gear Rising Revengeance Foxalive run. This is the first mission of the game after the prologue, and we are immediately being assailed by a handful of soldiers and our first Mastiff. This is a highly restricted run, and now that we have a little bit longer to talk about it, we can get into some of the details and I can explain some of the concepts. And for the people who are unfamiliar with my work, I've gone from making traditional walkthroughs into making highly edited, highly abridged challenge runs. And most recently we've been focusing on this format a lot, and if you're not used to it, this might be a little bit jarring. But if you just want a video full of action, no cutscenes, no downtime, no puzzles, no platforming, no like sundries, then this is the project for you, because this is going to be non-stop Raiden kicks ass the video. And this first mission is a wonderful combination of some stealth sequences, some action sequences, and some interesting difficulty spikes too. The fight coming up after this one is one of the hardest fights in the mission, and if you ever do a new game, Revengeance, this is one of the fights where you're going to get shut down because you do not know how to engage these sword cyborgs. And sword cyborgs are one of the most dangerous enemies in the game if you respect them too much and if you don't know how to manipulate them. But this fight starts with two soldiers into a Gekko. You can do a sliding cut and get both of the first two enemies, and then the Gekko will usually always run at you from off camera, so block him, and then use the QTE to get the easy Zandatsu. You can only do this with a full blade bar, so don't go wasting blade mode on blade cancels, or you'll have to build it back up. And right now, the meaty that those two sword cyborgs are going to do is really dangerous. And the manipulation for these fellows is to slide into them, blade mode cut their guard, and then stun them. So when they're stunned like that, if you build your meter, you can YB them and kill them. And this is the best strategy for taking on these sword cyborgs, sorry. It is the safest, most consistent, and completely commanding mechanism in the game for dealing with them. You can go into a parry duel, and every so often that can be pretty fun. You can get some lucky launches and some juggles and things and manipulate him. As you can see here, I'm going for more of a fight here to show you some of the things you can do in Metal Gear. It takes quite a long time because the game's designed a lot around the tools that you get, but we can have some fun here and kick his ass and then destroy him. And that's the end of one of the tougher fights in the mission. And now, moving on, we have a stealth sequence, which I really like the stealth in this game. It's kind of goofy, and a lot of the times it doesn't work. But finding lines in a game where the stealth doesn't even feel like it's meant to be in there, oftentimes can feel more fun than in games where the stealth is too powerful. Like if you look at a game like Spider-Man by the Insomniac team, the stealth in that is practically a cutscene or a load screen because it's so empowered it's not even challenging. If you look at something like Callisto Protocol with the stealth in the latter half of that game, you can turn your brain off and win. It takes no skill at all. It's completely brain dead. But this game, doing this can be kind of awkward, and it's not the hardest stealth, of course, but it's very easy to fail, it's very easy to do a bad line, and it's very easy for somebody to see you. So it's always nice when, you know, the plan comes together and you do something unusual or something cool. And I was tempted to do these moments as just action and combat, but I like the hybrid of a bit of navigation, you know, a bit of stealth, a bit of combat, a bit of a crazy frenetic battle, a bit of more of a precise one. And now we have two sword cyborgs here with rocket launchers, and I really wanted to hop off the top of this box and air execute the guy there, but he kept seeing me when I did it. So instead I'm going to do this in kind of a less interesting looking way. One of my goals for this, guys, is to have a good time. Having a good time is always key in a run like this, and that's one of the reasons why this is a challenge run, and it is a very difficult challenge run, but if you are not having any fun, I am going to give you the permission to segment the fight you are struggling with. And here we have Blade Wolf, who is one of my favourite bosses in the game, an absolute dynamite boss encounter, and one of the few bosses in this game where parrying makes a really big difference. So enjoy it while it lasts, because a lot of the fights are going to be... I don't want to call them boring, and I don't want to call them shitty, but on this challenge run, they are more of a test of patience than they are a test of skill, and those are the kind of things that really, really frustrate me. And I didn't remember when I came back to this game that the bosses weren't just like parry them a few times and win, because that's what I love about Metal Gear Rising. I love this. I know that when they do that jump attack, I win. And that makes this game so much different, which is horrible English. That makes this game much more different than its contemporaries. If I want a game where I do lots of combos, I can play things like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta. If I want a game where I want to feel really lethal and have super aggressive enemies, I can play Ninja Gaiden. If I want a game where I get to be empowered and tear people apart, I'll play old school God of War. But if I want to play a game about parrying, this is where I want to come. Because even though it has its flaws, this game made parrying very difficult for bad reasons, but it feels awesome when you do it. And that's one of the things that I think brings people back to Rising. Parrying in this game, as awkward as it is, as odd as that command input is, when you're doing it and when you feel connected to the game and the music's kicking in and you see the destructive force of it, even on the hardest difficulty, you feel like a beast. And a lot of games are forgetting that you're supposed to feel like that when you do something impressive, and then we get these situations where it's just nowhere near as interesting. But this game nailed it, and it nailed it a decade ago. And here we go again, we get the musical stinger on the dynamic soundtrack, and right now he's actually dead, I think, and I just don't realise, because I did so much damage to him, and I feel bad about Blade Wolf, so I don't think I cut him here. I think I'm gonna... Oh no, I did, I'm sorry, Blade Wolf. I only did it once though, you know, I should have let him fall like a gentleman, but apparently I was in a masochistic mood when I fought him. And then this encounter is kind of weird, because when you kill people here, you get an odd checkpoint, so when it spawns you back in, all the enemies are dead, and there's like one guy with a shield. So I wanted to do something really cool here, and then when I retried, it gave me a really stupid checkpoint, so I don't know if you'll see it. There's the checkpoint right there. But I think it was on the next sequence. This is annoying as well. Like, I love messing around on this game when you've got one dude. Anyhow, that's an odd fight. There's like one enemy after that I missed that I edited between because it gave me that weird checkpoint and I just thought it looked odd. So instead we get to the helicopters. And the helicopters are bad news bears. They're just not really fun to fight. You just kind of get close to them and you whoop their ass a bit, and sometimes they fall down and sometimes they don't. And they shoot you a lot, they fire missiles a lot, and they run away. I'm really happy there's not more of these in this run, because when you get here and you've got all the upgrades, you can embarrass these helicopters and kill them in one cycle pretty much, but when you don't have too much, you just kind of have to respect them a ton, and I hate respecting enemies. I want to destroy them, you know? I also don't find this to be a very enjoyable encounter, so it's not one I wanted to experiment with too much. But let's talk about the segmentation that I just mentioned. So, there are two restrictions on segmenting your run, guys. The first one is aerial enemies. Any fight that has an aerial component, I will give you complete express permission to segment. It's not because those fights are necessarily difficult. It's because when you don't have the Psy, and when I'm not allowing you to use EMP grenades outside of some very specific moments, dealing with flying enemies is the most frustratingly tedious and annoying factor in any encounter. And I segment, I think, one fight with an aerial component, and the rest of them I do it as intended. I'm not doing that to flex or to show my big Metal Gear Rising penis. I'm just doing that because it's meant to be fun and I managed to do it, but I didn't enjoy those moments, you know? So if you want to do this and you're not enjoying them, segment them. I don't mind at all. Doesn't bother me. The second component is for both enjoyment and style. If there is a fight in this game that you don't like, because it's just not your kind of thing, I think that's perfectly fine to segment that. But here's the kicker, right, guys? This is an honor system. You have to show me that you're being honest. So when you do it, I want you to tell me. If you don't tell me, we're going to have issues. But hopefully, you will, and everything will be fine. But the idea is, why lie about it? There's enough people lying and cheating on the internet for us to go into some monkey business about this, right? This is a fun run first, a challenge run second, but it is very challenging, and it's as challenging as you want to make it. This fight here is a pain in the ass without the Psy, by the way. This is one of those fights where I would 100% understand if anybody wanted to skip it, because it's just guns, flying enemies, and bad detection. But there's also an extra regulation there as well when it comes to segmenting. Any bad checkpoint that you don't like, you can segment. That goes under the fun/fights you don't like category, but it's still a valid thing. There are about 2 fights in this project, maybe 3, where I've woven 2 different fights together so that the footage is more exciting. Because I beat the fight twice. One of them had a good start and a bad end because it got like bad AI or RNG or whatever. And then the other one, bad start, good end. So instead of it being like half a good fight, I've cut them so it's just a good fight. And this is not meant to be the first in the world. It's not world's first. It's not, I've got a big dick, Carl Jobs to interview me immediately. You know, I'm not going to go to AGDQ and show you all my skills and then play a video. Like, that's just not what we're doing here, right? It's about transparency, it's about honesty, and it's about enjoyment. So if you want to have a badass footage, put two things together. But other than that, knock yourself out, guys. The restrictions will all be noted. You can follow it to your heart's content. And if you want to alter it in any way, feel free to do so, because at the end of the day, challenge runs are great, but if you make them too hard, nobody wants to do them. But here we go, we get our first introduction to the double-sworded standard soldier. This guy is really, really fun. He's one of my favourite enemies in the game, and I got quite lucky then with the way I prepped that. I managed to take out the sword cyborg at the same time. And then we have an interesting interim fight here with a couple of soldiers, and I'm going to do stealth on this one. This one leads to a kind of a secret grad fight. And it's really funny, guys, because, of course, this is the start of my recording. I didn't know what was in store for me in this project. I started this project as like a fun run for YouTube with not much investment. And by the end of it, it turned out to be one of the hardest things I've ever done on YouTube. and I didn't mean for it to be like that, but sometimes, you know, adversity finds you. And if you know, you know, but if you don't, it's because of grads. So this fight here has a Gekko and a single soldier, and if you stealth kill it, the doctor will applaud you. But if you fuck it up, I think it spawns a grad. And when I was first recording this, I was like, I don't want to fight a grad, dude, they're annoying. And little did I know, in my future, me and grads were going to clash quite a lot. So it's an interesting piece of, like, could you call that dramatic irony? Is that foreshadowing? It's some narrative device I'm not entirely certain of, but it's probably a form of dramatic irony, isn't it? It's a painful recollection for me, but hopefully an enjoyable one for you. But when you kill him, you'll get the accolade. So, crunch. There we go, and that's the end of the fight. And that leads us into the next sequence, which is a handful of dwarf geckos. And there's a couple of fights in this game, guys, where they add dwarf geckos to it. And there's no real cool way to fight this monster when you don't have anything. The most interesting thing you can do is knock him up into a juggle, and then blade mode cut him, and that's it. The problem is, the more you try to use fancy combos here, the more likely he is to grab you, or jump on you, or just straight up hurt you. And getting damaged by this enemy is the most frustrating thing probably in this game. So, after this fight, guys, you are never going to see me fight any dwarf geckos at all, outside of sparing interactions. Any fight that decides to drop them in at the end of it, I'll just transition away from. Because I find this enemy to be fucking tedious, and in my opinion, it should have been fodder, it should have been a one-hit kill, and they should have just filled the room with a dozen of them. Like, there's nothing fun to do to those monsters. Like, you should have been able to grab them for free and spin them around, and they should have been something that makes you feel powerful, because as it stands, they seem to be this kind of vestigial element from when this game was meant to be like Metal Gear, and because, of course, they're an homage to Metal Gear, they kept them, but they've just got too much life, they're too uninteresting, and all they do is spam grab. And if you don't know too much about Metal Gear Rising, enemies in this game can attack you from off-camera. In most action games, enemies pacify off-camera. Not this one. So you can get grabbed from off-camera, and then as you recover, you can get grabbed again, and if you're unlucky, they'll hit you while this is happening. And it just... it's not fun, you know? It's not fun to watch, it's not fun to play. And I kept the ranking in here because it was such a lame fight, but they still give me an S because they know how shit it is. But later on, you won't see many rankings at all because I wanted to speed the thing up a little bit. But this is an interesting sequence. There's some cameras in this room, and there's a couple of soldiers that move around. The first one's this guy. If you slide into him and cut him, you're okay. There's a guy to your left here, and you can cut him too. He's going to try and shoot you, but I want to slide and get him like that. And then right now, there is a single sword cyborg with a rocket launcher who's going to have a real big go at me. And he's the dangerous one. So I'm just going to launch him into a bit of a juggle, and then I'm going to start trying to OTG him. But sometimes your launcher's not the best. Sometimes you get stuck like that in mid-air when you're trying to do a combo on landing. You got to be careful when you press too many buttons in this game. It's surprisingly responsive and intuitive. But this guy will take a nuclear amount of damage when he wants to. So you really need... and be careful of that, of course. But I got really lucky then that he didn't go into the parry wall with me. Because he was against a wall, I seem to have got a priority there or something. But that's the end of the fight, and that leads us to the boss of this level, which is Mistral. One of the better looking bosses in Metal Gear Rising. I really like her design, but she has Dwarf Gekkos with her and they ruin the fight, as you can see. So luckily, all you really do in this encounter is you break her staff by parrying her, and then you bait her to throw the Dwarf Gekkos at you, and you parry that. This fight is all about spacing and being confident being close to Mistral. The one thing you need to know here for absolute complete manipulation is if you go into blade mode against this boss, she will counter with a programmed response. And that programmed response is the same attack every time. So if you ever go close to her and she starts a gold move, instead of trying to get away from it and panicking, just go into blade mode, she'll completely cancel the animation, and then she'll attack you. And then you can parry her. And that is the only piece of complexity in this fight that you can really do at this moment, because you don't have any of the fun tools, and other than like some tech maybe a speedrunner's discovered that I don't know about, there's not really much to this. You can mess with the barrel, you can fight her and stuff, you can hurt her by attacking. There's a few things you can do, but this fight's really frustrating. And it's just the camera, it's the ads, and it's the fact that Mistral does kind of what she wants. So this is me baiting her with that tech I just mentioned. I'm going to do this a lot too. So once you break the staff, she's going to jump behind you. And the only fear right now is if the Gekkos, the Dwarf Gekkos, get in the way. Sometimes they'll get involved, sometimes they'll be kind of ambient. And she's going to throw him at me, hopefully. If I get this, that's what I want. Look at the damage. Now she's going to jump away. And this is the phase, I think, where she starts throwing shit at you. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to ninja run while mashing attack to stop any Gekkos trying to catch me. Because the camera here looks ridiculous, and it's mandatory. The game forces you to look up there for some reason. Mistral also has to flip over Dwarf Gekkos to get close to you, and it's a really funny animation. But this is the end of the fight here. And she has to do that to transition this too. If she doesn't come to you and do the spinning move, she will never go to this phase. So you got to be careful with how you manipulate that, or you'll be there forever. And then the final phase is exactly the same. She's going to dash at us, and because the Dwarf Gekkos are there, she's going to land and then she's going to swing. When that happens, break the staff, and then you want to knock her away. Once you knock her away, she's going to go and grab somebody, and that's when we go for the parry. And immediately, I'm going to get a little bit of damage on the cut, and I'm going to try and get away from her because I want her right now to grab another Gekko. Sometimes she'll run and do her next phase, sometimes she'll grab the Gekkos. If she grabs the Gekkos, you will completely mitigate most of this fight, and I got really lucky then. And now she's going to run away, and she wants to throw another Gekko. Did you see that? If I'd not kicked her, and that's what killed her. She killed herself. We completely skip all the phases because her AI is so aggressive, it wants to chuck something that leads to her demise. And she's going to come down, and it's going to clash into the cutscene. So be careful, but you've already won and she's already dead. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoy the run. It's going to be a good one. This is Fox Die, not Foxalive. And I'd love to see some people trying it because it's a pain in the ass, but this game is really, really fun. Thank you for watching, and you take care now.